Great. Welcome to another episode of Talks with T. Today we have with us Martin Tronquit from Infomineo. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I think we briefly know each other from Endeavor, the Endeavor Entrepreneur Network. And one thing I've always noticed from kind of our interactions from afar is you seem to have kind of a controversial mindset. So you don't like to stick to the norms. When you speak, I listen because I always feel like you're going to say something that isn't necessarily part of the standard way people think.
Okay, thank you.
It's a compliment.
No, I take it. So I'm going to try and be okay today, not say things that are too.
No, I'd rather you do say things that are,
Sure.
a bit extreme. Where does that come from?
It's a very good question. I think I'm quite interested in politics. I've always have been, and since like 10, 12 years old, I read the news and whatever, which is atypical. And so the idea of taking an idea and criticizing it has always been something that is interesting to me, and ideas around creativity. I don't like, and when you do MBTI, you have a profile of the guy that doesn't want to think like the others.
Yeah.
I'm 100% this guy.
Okay.
And it's, I don't know, temperament and the type of family. We were discussing before this podcast, but I have 3 elder brothers.
Yeah.
And, if you want to exist in a family of 4 boys, you probably have to...
You have to find a way to stick out.
Correct. And to have a strong personality, to be creative and to find ideas, because you're the little one otherwise that everybody ignores. Yeah. So that might be that. I don't know, to be fair. But yeah.
How did you decide to get into consulting?
The story is the following. My passion is politics, as I said before. At some point, I'd love to go, if my wife allows me. So Sabrina, this is a message for you. If you allow me, I will go into politics.
And now it's public, so you've created a platform to eventually run for the presidency.
And correct, in 5 years now. 5
exactly.
years minus 1 week, and there will be a next election in France. Basically, that's always been my dream. I've been passionate about politics, but what I don't like is the fact that it's a job for many people. And you're, I guess, in Lebanon seeing that a lot. And because it's a job, you own it, you will not do what is right because somehow it becomes your resources and all that you have, right? And I said, okay, if I want to go in politics, I want to do it for the good of people, meaning I want to be independent. I want to really tell the truth and tell what I think is right and do what I think is right. So I said I want to be financially independent before I go into politics. To get financially independent early enough, entrepreneurship is probably the best way. Instead of saving for years and years and years, you can make a lot of money quickly. Not because I want to spend a lot of money, because I want to be independent and free. So to go into the entrepreneurship, you reverse engineer. One of the best ways to see the world of business and assess opportunities, create a network, is consulting. Consulting is a great a great industry for that. And I said, if I want to get into consulting, how do I do that? And I had to go and do the best business school possible, because it's very hard to get into consulting. And then, at that time I was at the Law University thinking about going to business or going to directly into more political sciences. And I said, okay, let me try and go to business. And I was lucky enough to make it to HEC and then to BCG and so on. So that's the story.
So you had kind of the vision that all these were stepping stones to entrepreneurship, and then entrepreneurship is a stepping stone to...
Yes, inshallah, I would say here. At some point, what matters is not so much that you deliver on your plan. No. What matters is that you have a plan, because that creates grit, that creates motivation. For the last 15 years, I've been following that plan, not because I want this plan to work, and I don't know, maybe I will never do any politics, but at least when I wake up in the morning and I have to study to go to make it to HEC, or I have to work hard at BCG, or have to do things in my business that that you have a part of fun, but they are all things that are not great. But I have that motivation because I know why I'm doing it with a long-term plan. I think that grit element is critical, and you just need to be okay with the fact that it might not lead you where you wanted to be or where you were planning initially. It's not a problem. It helped you for every day, and that works out very well.
Yeah, I think one common theme that I hear from talking to entrepreneurs is being passionate about something, like that higher purpose, and then using that higher purpose to give you the motivation, the drive to keep pushing. I guess in your case, the higher purpose is politics, and that's not something kind of building a plan, having a vision for your life. The reality is most people, even well late into their life, they don't even have that, right? So what's the point at which you started formulating this realization that shit, I need a plan?
I remember the bulb moment. I was in my garden. I was probably 19 years old, 18 years old. And I was thinking, as I was probably playing with my dog, and that came to me. So I didn't say, I need a plan and I need to think about it. It just came as a plan. Yeah. And today, for example, I know exactly what I want to do if I go into politics, step by step, how I want to build that, because I think about it on a regular basis. And it's not like you have a plan and you need to stick to it, but you need to have a plan, and then you seize the opportunities, and you need to be flexible with things that could be going sideways versus your plan. I don't know. So I was at BCG in Paris, and then there was an opportunity to start an office in Morocco. It was, frankly, vis-a-vis my plan, not part of my plan. I was like, it's an opportunity, let's take it. And then I went to Morocco, and then I moved here to Dubai and whatever. And at some point, you also need to be opportunistic and taking opportunities as they come. I think that long-term thinking really is making a big difference. And I see a lot of people that have a lot of potential, but they are just pushing things. Just, I'm doing good today, and we'll see what tomorrow lends me. And instead of pulling in with a goal in mind, and I think, just pushing could work, but I would say it's the likelihood of success might be less than when you know why you're doing things and what is your plan. And you don't need to say, okay, in 20 years my plan is, but maybe next year, 5 years down the line, how do I want to see myself? Typically, when I was in consulting, it's easy for me now to say, I wanted to be an entrepreneur and so on. Yeah. Somehow you also have the path of becoming a partner and so on. But I was like, do I have people that I want to look like, that I want to resemble, that are a model for me when I was in consulting? They were great people, but I didn't picture myself same as them. So, that pushing thing about, I'm getting next promotion wouldn't have worked for me. I wouldn't have ended up happy of my life. Trying to form plans, but not to be too strict. And it's not in an Excel sheet. It's just my brain.
Yeah. And so it sounds like that moment in the garden was kind of a life-defining moment for you. Yeah,
clearly. I remember it. I'm sure I'm going to have flashes for other things that are... But it's true that a lot of the realizations come at a spot moment. You have those moments. Once in a while, you can't predict when they're going to happen, when you're like, okay, now I'm clear about what's coming next. Yeah. And it could be for a long term, like this moment in the garden, but it could be just around, And in terms of decision making, what I've seen, which I think is interesting, is you have a moment where you have a lot of options that are opening up. And it's very stressful when you have options. I don't know, you're planning your holidays. You could do A, B, C, or D, and you're like, oh my God. And either you stress out on it and you force yourself into making a decision, or you're cool with it and you let it sink. And you're like, at some point, there is clarity coming by the data, by letting your mind digest things. And suddenly, boom, you got the choice, you got the insight that your decision is easy to make. And I think being relaxed with that and understanding with maturity that it will come, that you're going to make your choice without forcing it. I think it's very interesting to see. And it came to me quite late. I was trying to make a decision, that Excel sheet where you have your scores.
The pros and cons, the matrix, and SWOT analysis.
Yeah, exactly. And somehow that doesn't really work. And I think many people underestimate the power of their brains. Your brain has an ability to synthesize information and to come to a conclusion that is much better when it's not consciously doing it. See what I mean? And there are quite a few books that I read about this that tell you, just leave it to instinct. A lot of your brain is not actually in your brain, it's in your spine.
Yeah.
And these instincts, these reflexes, are actually very powerful. If you start trusting yourself and trusting the ability of your brain to do that without forcing it, then I think you can make quite a lot of good decisions.
Yeah, no, I think only later in my life have I started to realize the power of the gut and instinct, right? And because I've always been very logical, very methodical, and so the gut and the instinct relies on that part of logic, but then adds a layer of in French, je ne sais pas quoi, on top of it, right? Where you can't really explain it, but it just feels right.
Yeah, correct.
It just feels right.
Correct. But actually, it's not the gut. I mean, the gut is full of neurons.
Yeah, and that's data, actually. It's just synthesize. I guess
Correct.
what you were saying. It's synthesizing data, bringing in variables that maybe you don't even know were variables you should use in your...
So it is gut feeling is thinking that is not conscious of thinking in a way. And for someone like me and like you who is very, very rational, we want to control and say, no, I can't make decisions like it's random. No, it's not random. Your gut is not random. It tells you things, but doesn't come through the normal processing of information in your brain that you word things and so on. But it is thinking nonetheless, and learn how to trust it. And the truth is, from experience, you see that the gut decisions are often very good decisions. And you then, from the habits of seeing as a good decision, then you start to trust it a little more.
I read this book, I don't know if you read it, Mindset by Carol Dweck.
No.
So it just talks about, a lot of the ideas, it talks about growth mindset versus closed mindset. And growth mindset is this idea that what you're talking about, where you see a failure and you look at it as a growth opportunity. So like the simple example, it starts with childhood actually. So as a child growing up, if your parents are always like, oh, amazing, you got an A, then your parents start rewarding you on the outcome versus on the effort, right? And so what the book argues is you should be telling your kid, amazing effort, you got a C, what did you learn from this? The way you spent your time, right? And so a lot of the way we're growing up in schools is trying to help us avoid failure, because if you want to get an A, you have to stick to the game plan, right? And sometimes it's okay to get a C if you tried something a little bit different, but that's not how school rewards us. So for me personally, I had to break, because I was kind of an A student. When I went to college and discovered freedom, I started becoming an F student, but that's a different tangent. But I had to kind of break out of that mentality. I was going down a similar path, GE, going up the ladder, but it sounds like for you, you kind of always had this mentality of it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to have failures. Where did that come from? What are kind of memories you have where that kind of approach was encouraged, or where you believe it kind of started from?
So first of all, I fully agree. I mean, the power of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset is crazy. One other dimension in which having a growth mindset is important is tolerance for different thinking. If you're a fixed mindset, if somebody comes with a different way of thinking about it, you'll just ignore it. Whereas a growth mindset, you'll be a much better listener. So I fully agree. Where does that come from? I don't know. The fundamental thing, I think, is emotional safety. I grew up in a family that was traditional, and it was not about hugging all the time, but I've never doubted that my parents loved me, and my brothers and whatever. So, they would talk to me about achievements, but never question the fundamental that it would be a smart kid with energy and so on. And having that, outcome would not be attached to love and affection. And in some families, in some setups, children have the feeling that if they achieve, they're going to be loved more. And that's horrible. That's horrible. If you don't achieve, then you're not worthy of love. That's not a good thing. I think parents' love should be unconditional, and in a way, that's what you're sharing. It's a C, but you did a good effort. I recognize that, and also there needs to be tolerance as to the way you think. For me, it was never. I never liked to take the same path as other people to get to potentially the same or different conclusions, but I was never put down on stop thinking this way, think this way. They were probably patient enough to wait for where I would end up, and if it happened to be interesting, smart, potentially giving good results, then fine. I have two examples here.
Yeah.
One is I have 3 children, and my 2 daughters think in a very different way. Number one, she's by the book, super strict and so on, and you can follow her step by step in her reasoning, and it's by the book. So it's easy to know that the outcome is going to be good. The second, she thinks in a different way, and my wife and I are a little different. My wife would say, no, the first step in your reasoning is not right. I'm like, no, let her finish, and then you'll understand how she thinks. And the results are often very good as well. And it's sometimes more creative and so on. So patience is important. Second is when I studied, I was in the law university. In law, you have 2 strategies.
Yeah.
Either you learn by heart, or you understand the reasoning. And because law is a logical thing, right? And you can the reasoning can be the reasoning of the lawmaker, but also the reasoning of the judge when you want to assess the outcome of something. And I remember my thinking was always, I want to understand the logic of the law, the logic of the judge, and then I would reach the right conclusions by redoing that reasoning. So I didn't need to learn by heart, and I studied much, much less than many others, but the outcome was good. And in the university, you're very free to work at your rhythm, how you want, and so on. And I liked it because I probably had a very, very different way to achieving the same result as others, but no one was bothering me in that, and gave me that confidence that by reasoning you could, and it gives you confidence because you do it once, twice, 3 times, and you then end up with conclusions that are 90% of the time correct. And then you're like, okay, I can apply that to many things, many other things. And that was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the other important aspect of kind of this concept of first principles thinking is it allows you to challenge, right? It allows you to challenge that, because a lot of the things we know today, a lot of the things we do today are just based on somebody told us, right? And so when your whole foundation is first principles thinking, you're just always have this inherent idea of why. Why is it done this way? And then sometimes when you break problems down to the core, I was like, that doesn't make sense, right? There's this kind of, especially nowadays, there's this, I'd say, incorrect notion that, or half correct notion that in order to start a business, you need funding, you need to quit your job, you need VC money, and the reality is, even Bayzat, I mean, we started the company when we all had jobs, and then Talal, my brother and co-founder, quit first, and we were funding the business, me and Brian, and then I quit, and then Brian quit. And so there's this kind of idea, I talk sometimes to people like, I hate my job, and why don't you start something? I don't have the time, I need to quit, I need to find an idea, I need to find VC. That's not how it works.
It's finding excuses. For me, that's finding excuses. And so on the funding thing, it's very interesting. Somehow my VC was my wife. She was working, she was making a living for us. She was funding the business. She was funding me, therefore funding the business. And the funny story is that, so I started for a year, I didn't get myself any salary. Then my partner, Hamza, joined me as a co-founder. It was a little more risk averse, but once we had the first clients, that was sizable, then he joined me. He took a cut for his salary for a year so that we were on equal terms. And then a few months later, the business was starting to grow, and my wife quit her job and joined us. And yes, it's a very similar story to yours. And on the funding part, and there's quite a few businesses where it is very clear and true that you need funding. You need funding because you need to be faster than others. Correct. You need to burn and to be okay to lose money. There's plenty of businesses where you don't need that. For me, the thinking I have on that, and again, basic to first principles, right? Funding is money. Okay, how do you get money in a business? Number one, you don't spend. Number one, you're reasonable. So do you buy yourself the latest Apple computer, or do you buy like a computer that is going to do the job for me? I remember I bought old computers for BCG at like $300 a piece for the first 10 computers I bought. Yeah, it was potentially $2,000 saved. $5,000 saved, you know. So you be reasonable. When I speak to entrepreneurs, some say, first thing I'm going to do a super good website, find an office, furnish it, and paint it. I'm like, what the heck? I mean, do business, and then you'll do these things. Second is so not spending. Second is you make sacrifices. I mean, what you need to know is the money you don't raise and the cash you don't pay yourself today is going to worth 100 times more in a few years. So being very reasonable yourself is critical. Then it's clients. Clients give you money. That's €1 of revenue is exactly the same as €1 of fundraise. Making 100K of revenue is the same as 100K of fundraise. And again, if you trust your business, it has potential to grow. I mean, giving away equity should be horrible. I mean, it should be the thing you do not want to do. So getting revenue, then getting debt, then getting equity. And for now, the first thing, I'm thinking about business. I'm going to raise 10 million. Fine, it's okay. But for me, that's a last line of funding you should think of.
And understanding why you're doing that, right? Like you're absolutely right. In some businesses, being first matters. Like that's the difference between life and death of the business, right? And so those are really kind of some of the only cases that come to mind where you probably do need to raise.
No, I think there's virtue also in controlling yourself as an individual to have other people looking at your business. Having, some people maybe not be enough self-motivated. Some people told me, you're starting a business, that's great because you're going to work less. I'm like, no. No, but
whoever thinks that should not get into it.
Yeah, some people need to be pushed, and having an investor might be that. The investor will push you, will increase your level of ambition and so on. So it's not only about the money. By the way, one thing that I've never seen really happening is I'm coming. It's not only about money, but my network is going to help you tremendously. Not really. It's very, very seldom the case.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I heard some people say it happened to them, but not really. I mean, at some point, you get money, and it's just about the money, and it's great. I mean, it's enough to justify the industry.
So we'll get into Infomineo, but one thing that kind of led me to reach out to you was you shared a very personal story on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. And, this podcast for me was all about people see the headlines, the TechCrunch articles about entrepreneurship, but people don't see the life story behind an entrepreneur. And you shared a very personal and clearly life-defining moment on LinkedIn. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to talk to Martin because this is exactly why I started this whole show. Do you mind talking about it?
Sure.
Yeah. So you had kind of posted about a tough time you went through when your brother passed away from cancer and how that kind of changed your views around life. Can you talk a little bit about that story?
Yeah, sure. So we're a family of 4 brothers, and as it happens, there were really 2 pairs. My oldest brother was my godfather, so we're very, very close, and the 2 in the middle were very close as well. I mean, we are close, all the 4 of us together.
But those pairings,
yeah, exactly. So it was really my mentor and so on. And when he was 29, he got a brain tumor, and as it happens, 4 years later, he passed. And it was like, there are movies around things that are made for people so people cry. And you're like, it's exaggerated. And in that case, it was very much that. Actually, he learned that his wife was pregnant the day before he died. So, whatever. It was tough times, and I was quite young. I was just 23 when it happened, and I was not ready to handle those type of things.
I'm sorry you went through that.
No, it's life, And when you think about it, I mean, that post was interesting. A lot of people reacted and told me it happened to me as well, and had my whatever, and either you think those things are destroying you and an excuse for not doing A, B, or C. On the contrary, you use them and you build on them. And for me, obviously, it was both, right? I was really sad, and still today, I mean, you can hear my voice that I'm still emotional about it. But it taught me a few things. It told me that life is short, and it can stop at any point in time, and it's okay. But you don't want to regret things. It doesn't mean that you be short term and drinking and taking drugs, whatever. But it means that the things you want to do need to have sort of meaning, that they go into something that is meaningful to you. So the way you make your choices, the way you spend your time, this is important. The only commodity that you can't really multiply is time, right? So make good use of your time, and don't waste it with people that are draining your energy, these type of things. That was important to me. And second, it was a thing about the relative importance of things. When I tell you failure, I don't care. Not having money, I don't care. Because I know what real suffering is, like many other people know, by the way. And, you could put everything in relative terms. Yeah, okay, I crashed my business, so what? I'm still alive, I still have people that I love and love me. I've at Infomineo, we've worked in quite a few countries, so I've traveled quite a lot in Africa, in Nigeria, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, and whatever. And you don't see less joy in people that are poor or whatever. So at some point you realize that what matters is things that are not material, and things that are and basically what it gave me is a boost in maturity. I learned things at an early age that people learn later. And I'm not glad that my brother passed away. I'm very sad for it, but I'm somehow glad and thankful that it gave me power and maturity earlier than others on some things. And sometimes I have conversations with people that didn't go through the same sort of difficulties, and they tell me about not having that promotion as, oh my God, this is super important. This is hard. I'm like, really? and you can't blame them, because if you don't live something like that, and somehow I can, in the conversations I have, I can recognize the people that have suffered and the people that have not yet suffered, because it's just the question of yet. At some point we all will face those type of things. And this is probably a very strong driver for me. Maybe, we're discussing about starting a business and having that plan and so on. Maybe none of that would have happened if I didn't face those situations. And now it's about at least 100 ways that impacts my life today. For example, very stupid things for me, that there is. My family is what matters the most to me by far. So Infomineo is a big part of my life. But I know, and it's very clear to everyone in the company, that what comes first in my family. I want to spend time with them. I want to be there for them, and so on. And organize my life around these type of things. Like I chose to have an office that is like 8 minutes away from from my house, in a scooter, so I don't even need the time to park. So when I'm not working, I'm 8 minutes later giving the bath to my children, having dinner with my wife or whatever. And some other people might say, I don't care, I'm going to work for 10 years now, give it all, go to burnout, and then, I'll have joy later. I mean, that's clearly not something you do when you've gone through these type of things, I think.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing that story. I think it's very courageous, and I think, it's you put yourself vulnerably out there. And so, I think that takes a lot of courage. So thank you for that.
Thank you. It's always on this thing. By the way, it's on social media, and it's a very different angle to it. It's a strange beast. Social media. It requires, basically the business model of all social media is around your attention, and what grabs your attention is things that connect to you emotionally, and what connects to you emotionally tends to be more personal stories and so on, and in some cultures, like the French culture, you generally do not tend to share your personal things too much, and finding just your balance on how far you can go in exposing yourself, not being just showing your life like you would on Instagram, is a tricky thing. And when I was publishing that post, I asked my wife to read it and to tell me what she thought. And she said, yeah, it's borderline too personal and so on. And I said, my goal is two things. One, that people that have similar situations find strength from it. And second, I'm keeping it on a more of a business side of things. What does it help you do in business? So it's a very fine line. Because if you want to get audience, it's easy. You just put pictures of yourself and tell life stories and so on. But that's not something I would be willing to go to.
There's I can't remember who came up with it, but there's this triangle in psychology, and one of the corners of the triangle is victim, and then there's a mirror of all those corners on the other side of kind of a developed person, and the corner that's victim on the other side of the mirror is victor.
Okay,
right?
Interesting.
And so when I hear your story, I think of it's very easy to become a victim in those situations. Say like, oh, why did this happen to me? Blah blah. But in essence, you became a victor because you said, what can I learn from this? I'm sure it wasn't like that. It probably took you some time to get to that realization. Yeah. And so why do you think that happened? How do you think that happened to go from victim to victor?
I think it takes energy. If you put a lot of energy in something, I don't know, victim, you would tend to focus on yourself, and it will deplete your energy, and you will stay on your couch and lament about your life. When you have a lot of energy, you need to spend it. And if you spend a lot of energy, then you'll be asking yourself questions and be having discussions and whatever, and then you come to that realization, you process that situation. I think energy, and then we're discussing about growth mindset, a fixed mindset. I think there is a clear line as well about optimists and pessimists, and I'm a fundamentally an optimist. I think people want to do good. I think life is going to be better tomorrow than it was yesterday. When I flip a coin, I am sure it's going to be falling on the right side.
True entrepreneur.
No, on this one, no, because I know it's 50-50. But no, but being an optimist, will help you go from victim to victor. I think when you're a pessimist, it's very, very difficult. I am very convinced that your likelihood of success in life is linked to your optimism and positivity and so on. So I think that's probably what makes the shift.
Yeah, I mean, there's a thing I shared with my team, I think during the midst of COVID. It was a study a psychological study on happiness. And if you think about a pie chart, 40, depending on the study, 40 to 50% of happiness is genetic, like predisposed to specific hormones that cause the other kind of 50 to 40% is our perception of our circumstances. Yeah. And there's only 10% that is really truly our circumstance that affects happiness. And so, what most people don't realize is the way we see our circumstance is the biggest thing within our control that directly affects our happiness. And I think most people miss the mark on that.
Yeah, and one thing is, and now we know that your brain is wired from the way you think. And you call that neural pathways. And basically, the more you think in a way, the more it reinforces this pathway of thinking in a similar way in the future. So if you start with a positive mindset in childhood, when your parents say, you fell from your bike, but no worries, you're going to learn, you're going to be very good at biking, you're going to be having that positive mindset and build on that and become a positive person, and it will reinforce itself all the time. And when you have something hard happening to you, you'll say, okay, what good is there for me from that? Or if when you're a child, your parents say it's horrible, be careful, avoid this, avoid that, whatever, you're going to be always looking at the worst outcome of anything you will do, and it will shape your brain that way. And I think, when I look at my education and whatever, it was probably pretty much that positivity that was given around trust, around it's not a problem, just you fell, Are you hurt? Yeah, okay, fine. Cry for 5 minutes and then move on. And I think that helps a lot.
you're in a new stage of the business. If where you're now the lowest performing salesperson,
I'm zero now.
And so if you break down Infomineo into kind of the phases, how would you kind of classify those phases?
Okay, so there was infancy. Infancy, I would say, the first 3-4 years, everything is growing, booming. You need to figure out. You have a problem. You need to fix it all the time. You're the jack of all trades, etc. That was phase 1. Then phase 2 was really teenage age, where you go to 25 people. You have to put in place processes. You're starting having more problems and whatever. And typically growth-wise, in the beginning, obviously you start from very little. So you grow 80% a year, 100% a year, and so on. Then you slow down to, for us, it was 20, 30% a year. And then you need to figure out things, put in place things that are important for your future, like equivalent to life. You need to study and to go to university and so on. So you put in place your ERP and your CRM and your processes and your job descriptions and salary grid and so on. It's not the most fun parts of running a business. And now we're, I think, in early adulthood, where we're getting back at figures of growth that is just amazing. This year we are more than 60% higher than last year, where, it's, for us, it means that we're going to hire 150 people this year, roughly. So that's starting to be, but you're doing that where you're the director of an orchestra and not yourself doing the things, and you just push on one lever, the other. So you sell like hell. So then it's about pushing on recruitment to hire enough, and then recruitment is doing an amazing job. Then it's about the training team that needs to take over, and it's becoming like a more of a harmony, because you're more mature as a business and so on. And it's really nice to see. And now it's how far is it going to go. And what is interesting and fun and motivating is, I do not see any limit to our growth. Sometimes you have a market that is X and you're reaching to 8% of X. You're like, okay, I need to find another market. For us, it's we're just at the beginning of it. We didn't speak a lot about the business, but in Infomineo, we do research, we do design, we do language services. We're going to start analytics. For now, we only have one business that is at scale. It's research. All the others are literally booming, and they could all be at the same size. So just by diversifying our businesses, we could do 4 times bigger. And we were mostly operating on Europe, the Middle East, and Africa for our offices in Casablanca and Cairo. We just opened an office in Mexico City. Now the American market is opening for us, and it's going to be literally doubling the potential of the company. So if you take ×4 on the businesses, ×2 on the geographies you cover, plus next year we're going to go to Asia, we could do 12x what we are today. And today we are 200 people. So 12x is like 2,500 people. So it's just the beginning of adulthood. And in a way, when you're 20 something, you've not achieved a lot, but you're ready to have your professional life and really achieve. So that's where we are. It's really a really interesting phase.
That's amazing. That's super exciting. It's super exciting. It's funny because you've been doing this now for 10, 11 years.
10 years, yeah.
It's funny that sometimes it takes us a lot as leaders to learn, to develop, and then I feel like something clicks, you figure it out, and then just the growth curve after that. It's like for me, that was a very similar story. You and I were talking before the podcast around what's happening with our revenue because of COVID. But I think a part of it was also me stepping out of the way of the business, just to say that actually I need to get the best people I can, and need to put them in place so they can run the business, and then so I can play that conductor role. Because I need to spend the time thinking about the business, not in the business. And so it's interesting that sometimes to make the business grow, you almost need to get out of the way of the business and let other people run the show. Yeah,
and by the way, by getting out of the way of the business is more precisely out of the way of the people. And just let them be and do what they're good at and they deliver. It's amazing. Yes, I fully agree. And what is interesting, what I've come to realize in business is you get 95% right, you get 2% of the outcome. You get 96% right, you get 90% of the outcome. For some reason, these little tiny thing that you figure out, sometimes you figure out early enough, sometimes it takes you years to realize it. For us, one of the things we changed is the way we call one of the contractual models that we have. And it was stupid, right? Just the wording changed. Nothing else changed. And our clients clicked immediately. They understood much, much better what we're talking about. And that's just that. And it's true of so many little things. And you keep optimizing and changing tiny things, and some have disproportionate effect. That's why I think that experimentation, that acceptance of failure is really, really important. It's not just when you start a business, it's in the whole of the life of the business, you have to take risks. Typically, the fact that my partner and I stepped up entirely from BD helped the business grow much faster. But the thing, you're like, okay, if it fails, we are fucked. Yeah. And actually, it was interesting to see that you can take those sort of risks, and it's a calculated risk because most of our revenue is recurring anyway. So we wouldn't have had new sales if ever there was a failure, and it was okay. But you need to accept the prospect of it's not working out to uncover this thing that is going to make the business boom.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, we didn't get us time to spend talking about actually the business and the growth story there. But I have a feeling that this probably won't be the last time we speak. A couple of things I really heard you say during the discussion that I'll take away from our conversation is just using first principles thinking as a way to have almost unconventional thinking. The idea of making a plan but not having to stick to it, and how important that is to kind of bring success towards you. The other one that really stuck with me is patience. Patience is important to fuel creativity in childhood, but even I think in life. And the last one is really life is short. Make sure you don't have any regrets. And so it's been a pleasure chatting with you. The time flew by. I think, for all our Francophone listeners, you heard it here first. Martin Tronquit for president. We'll announce
2027.
2027. Perfect. Thanks all for your time, man.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Take care.